Let's give it up for PwC Middle East Financial Service People and Organization Leader, Aamena Khan.
My name is Aamena. I am a partner in PricewaterhouseCoopers People and Organization practice, currently focusing in financial services. And what I wanted to talk to you about today, so I have about 30 minutes, and we can pause throughout or I can take your questions at the end, but I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk to you a little bit about the impact that fintech disruption is having on workforce in particular. So the advent of technological and digital transformation is really pervasive in all sectors, but in financial services in particular, it's really changing the way we do everything from the way we bank to insurance to our asset management. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how the workforce needs are changing and how your organizations can cope with that. Should have asked for this, is the clicker. So New World, New Skills is actually a program that PwC has invested in. We are a global professional services firm. We are the largest professional services firm in the world, although in this day and age, size really doesn't matter. But just to give you an idea of the scale, we as a firm globally have invested $3 billion over the next 3 years in upskilling our own people. And that's quite a huge investment. And part of what I'll be talking to you about is what our experience has been in bringing our folks up to speed and making sure that our market-facing offerings are digitized and responsive to today's demands. Just by way of introduction, I also lead the Women in Technology group within PwC, which is basically an outreach program as well as a mentorship program for women within the firm who are interested in technology and in also digital upskilling. I'm also part of the partner group that sponsors Tomorrow Today. So our digital upskilling program is called Tomorrow Today. I also have led the design and development of Quest, which is a market-facing digital asset, which basically is a single platform that allows organizations to predict employee engagement, and it is something that has digitized our previously analog methodology for change management and transformation within organizations. My industry experience ranges from FS to aviation, consumer, industrial products. I'm not a career consultant. I have about 25 years of experience, working experience. I started my career in North America and have now been in the Middle East for more than 15 years. I don't know where the time has gone, but yeah, I'm still here, still standing. But the amazing thing about our firm is that it keeps people like me pretty busy. Every day is different, and then I get to come out and talk to folks like you to help kind of solve important client problems. So what I wanted to go over is the changing landscape of the workplace in the context of this massive pace of technological change that we're all facing. And then the business case for upskilling your workforce. And then we'll talk to you about PwC's own journey, some of the lessons we've learned, what has worked for us, what has not worked for us, and then maybe at the end, if we've got some time, happy to take your questions as well. So we'll just show you a short video. I don't know if this is the sound working? Hold on. Can someone just check on the sound?
We are creating a divide in our society between those who are part of the new economy and those who are not able to join in there.
But what we learned from past episodes of technological change is a lot of jobs being replaced by technology, but the long-term benefits for the next generations can be immense.
It's really important that people are open to want to learn. They're open to being upskilled themselves, because the reality is what we don't want is to leave a whole swathe of society behind.
It's not a training expense anymore. It's an investment for the future.
Upskilling is a global issue because technology is pervasive. It just turns out it's slightly different from place to place.
Everybody is affected by this transformation. Therefore, we have to work out a strategy.
If we embrace upskilling, if we take ownership for ourselves, I do think we can write the narrative for what the future looks like.
This is a global issue that's affecting not just financial services, but virtually every sector out there. I think probably in the region, healthcare as well as FS is most affected. And this is something that is going to affect our own jobs and the jobs of our peers, not just now, but in the future as well. It's expected that by 2022, which is just 2 years from now, about 75 million roles will be in decline. So that means they will either, the distribution of labor between human beings and augmentation and automation will really shift. And that means about 133 million people will need a new career path. So it's not just an adjustment in how to work differently, but it's also just an overhaul of a lot of our traditional roles, especially in financial services. And CEOs are naturally worried, especially in this region. They have rated the speed of technological change as one of their top 3 worries, alongside geopolitical uncertainty, especially in the GCC here, as well as cyber threats. So it's something that is seen as a huge opportunity, but it's also something that could potentially be very disruptive or destructive even if organizations are not poised and if their workforces are not ready for the challenge ahead. Within financial services, automation and augmentation is expected to put pressure on many jobs that traditionally have been around for generations. We identified the percentage of job content that would be affected in some roles that all of you can appreciate. Within the next 15 years, about 92% of what accountants do today and bookkeepers do today will be eliminated. It'll either be automated or it'll be augmented. 90% of what credit analysts do, tellers, 88% of what they do currently is going to be done. And for those of you who are based here and bank with local banks such as Emirates NBD, you know for a fact that it takes you like days to get in touch with a live person. There's always, there's chat bots on the website. You've got online banking. If you call the customer service number, you're talking to, I think her name is Eva or something. So we're already experiencing this, and what that means is all of these folks who have been filling these traditional roles are going to either be unemployed or be under tremendous pressure to reskill or to upskill. Loan officers. And one of the things that at some point in this conference, hopefully you guys have discussed is with artificial intelligence and machine learning, there is a whole list of kind of ethical questions that come up around bias, and are we kind of instituting those biases? Loan officers right now, I mean, it's a very, you have to go in and apply for a loan in person, and there's some subjectivity involved, but now with all of these algorithms and the turnaround time for mortgages, for instance, is literally gone from 3 weeks to like 3 days. But there are some ethical questions there also, because we have to constantly audit these. But there is it's not to say that these folks will lose their jobs and there will be nothing left for them to do, but they will have to probably shift their focus into areas that are not as easy to automate or to augment. Well-established institutions are also starting to be at risk. So in the traditional kind of workplace or marketplace, it was size was everything, right? And your partnerships or the amount of money you spend on technology and your compliance infrastructure was all going to give you a competitive advantage. Not anymore. Financial services, which is a highly regulated industry, regulation is still behind on a lot of it's way behind the pace at which this industry is moving. It's causing new entrants to make it's much easier for new entrants to come in, and you guys are all involved in fintech. You understand that regulation is behind, which means existing and well-established, and we include PwC in that, organizations are really having to look at their operating model and really look at their market offering to see if it is relevant and if it is timely. In banking and payments, about 30% of the businesses are going to be at risk by 2020, which is this year already. In insurance, about 22% of businesses will be at risk. And in terms of banking CEOs, over 80% of them are concerned about the speed of technological change and whether their workforces can actually adopt to that change. Technology is disrupting FS at an unprecedented rate. I think the only sector that's not far behind is healthcare. Blockchain is going to change the dynamics for cost, savings, and trust. 2 years ago, only 13 organizations focused on blockchain technology, only 13 secured $365 million in funding. And I'm sure by now that has gone up. Robotics and AI will address key pressure points, reduce costs, and mitigate risks. 72% of decision makers believe that AI will be the business advantage of the future. And again, some of the ethical questions that arise from using AI are ones that also need to be looked at. We know that our client base here, which is mostly in retail banking and financial services, the use of RPA, robotic process automation, is on the rise. In fact, retail banks are competing with each other to see how many processes they can actually automate. So the likes of FAB, Emirates NBD, Al Rajhi Bank, National Commercial Bank, these are all organizations that have already put in place and are investing a lot in RPA. Customer intelligence, data analytics, this is a very powerful area. I mean, we have now 20 times more usable data on customers than we did just last year alone. And this pace is going to accelerate so fast. And how do we use that data to predict customer behavior or to enhance customer experience? The public cloud is becoming the dominant infrastructure model, although the Middle East is a little bit behind the curve a little bit on that. But over 52% of asset management CEOs believe that cloud computing is going to be strategically very important. That figure is a lot higher at a global level. And then cybersecurity, obviously being, as we are more and more reliant on technology and digitization, the threat of cybersecurity issues is kind of looming over us. Almost 70% of CEOs in financial services reported that they're somewhat or extremely concerned about cyber threats. I guess those 30% who are not concerned are really sleeping at the wheel, because it really should be at the top of any CEO's agenda. Digitization will be, visible across the entire FS value chain. And when I say FS, we're primarily referring to traditional banks. I'm going to skip over this slide. To stay relevant, though, in what we're calling tomorrow's world, but it's really here already, FS institutions are going to need to leverage their talent. So there's going to be a new balance of jobs. The number of job holders and the number of unique jobs will probably decrease with the advent of automation and augmentation. The perceived value of those jobs is also going to adjust. And that's where, for HR functions within an organization, it's going to require new compensation and reward models as a result. Pivotal talent, so those folks who are not necessarily at the top of the food chain, but those folks who are possessing competencies and attributes that are difficult to automate, such as creativity, design thinking, innovation. Those are the types of skill sets that are the skill sets of the future. Those are the things that robots are not going to be able to do as well in the shorter term. And so those folks will need to be compensated because that's highly sought after talent, not just in FS, but in other industries as well. One thing, though, that is indisputable is that as professionals ourselves and as organizations and as regulators and government agencies, the ability to adapt is important. I would go a step further, but to be on the front foot and to be able to predict where the workforce is moving and what skill sets are required is really going to be a competitive advantage. Being on the front foot, again, is very important, not being on the receiving end always of these changes. So the need for upskilling. I mean, when you hear the word upskilling, it's a bit of an old school term. You think of classroom training, you think of computer-based training where you pull people out of the business, give them a skill, they're supposed to come back to their old job and try to put it in place, and then organizations always have a very difficult time trying to assess the return on training spend. But what we offer is that upskilling really is no longer an activity that happens in a silo. It has to be part of the culture of an organization, and this is what we are trying to do at our firm. And we have had, there's been a lot of lessons learned for us as well, and we're quite open about what has worked for us and what hasn't worked for us. By upskilling, we're talking about the knowledge, skills, and experience of the future. So accounting degrees, for instance. I don't know, I have a son in university, and he started a year and a half ago, and already I was a bit kind of ill-equipped in terms of what to advise him on what to major in, right? Because a lot of the jobs when I went to university are completely obsolete now, and the rate of jobs becoming obsolete has skyrocketed. So we're really talking about what are the skill sets that individuals require to excel in a world where transactions are not important anymore? They're being automated, and you get machines and algorithms to do those things. We expect tomorrow's fintech workforce to be obviously technologically savvy, but in equal measure being very creative. And constantly rethinking what their job is on a daily basis to continuously improve. And then accepting robots and artificial intelligence as an augmentation of your workforce, almost as colleagues and coworkers who continually have to learn with you. We expect them to be empathetic, resilient, and ready for challenge and ready for the change as well. And then obviously always being cautious and cognizant of the fact that there are vulnerabilities in this new world order, and the vulnerabilities are typically around cyber threats. In the GCC in particular, people are ready to upskill themselves, and survey after survey shows that people want to learn. 9 out of 10 people say that they're ready to learn new skills, and they will take it upon themselves to do that. But shockingly, only about 20% of them feel like their current employment situations are allowing that kind of opportunity. Now that's really shocking, but it's shocking to some, but not to me. I've been in the region for more than 15 years, and I know for a fact that globally, it's 74% of the population feel like they are getting enough opportunity. The reason why this number is so low in the GCC is because it's a largely expatriate workforce, and when you're hiring expats, or traditionally when you've hired expats, you expect them to be coming to the table with experience and skills. And so upskilling for expat component of your workforce has always been deprioritized, but we can no longer continue to do that. You need to obviously focus on developing national talent as well, but you're going to become very irrelevant very quickly if you're not continuously, even as an expat or as an employer of expats, upskilling your own folks. So regulators and providers obviously need to work hand in hand to make sure that this is happening. I mean, there are various components of this ecosystem that need to come together to make sure that there's continuous learning going on. Government leaders and policymakers need to ensure that the right certifications are in place for certain job holders, for certain highly regulated sectors. Educational institutions also need to go beyond just the bricks and mortar training institutions that they're used to being. Also, private financial entities have a huge role to play in this as well. So new world, new skills. Our own upskilling journey, as I mentioned, we have committed to investing $3 billion over the next 3 years. We're 1 year into our journey. We were a little bit behind, but the pace at which we are focused on this and just laser vision, the leadership at the very top has been leading really by example. So I'll go over a little bit about how we have structured our program, and I'm happy to take questions on any of this as we go. So we are aiming to not just upskill our own people, but there is a community outreach component as well. We have about 250,000 consultants globally. We are a confederation of partner-owned firms globally. So the Middle East firm has 23, 24 countries and thousands of consultants. We are preparing our own workforce. We are trying our best to be at the forefront of this discourse, and we feel like sharing our own upskilling journey is a way to get the conversation started about what could work for your respective organizations. And then also upskilling as a focus for the communities in which we work. So like good consultants, we have come up with a 6-step, this is oversimplifying it, but we've got basically 6 steps that you need to think through when you think about how to upskill your folks. So determining a clear digital workforce goal is extremely important, and that needs to come from the top. So defining a timeline, defining what contingency of your workforce you will focus on first, and how quickly you will roll it out. What are the technologies you will focus on? So we've got 8 emerging technologies that we focus on. And then telling a compelling story about the importance of digital upskilling. And you can't do this without, the hearts and minds of your workforce. Again, this is not something that you're going to be sending people to a classroom and they come back and you expect them to work completely differently. Choosing a focused launch point. So what we have done is we have a 6-week digital academy where we pull the best people out of our business in cohorts of 60 to 80 at a time. They don't do any client work during that 6 weeks. They are immersed in learning certain technologies, and then they come back into the business, and their KPIs are different from everyone else's. Their KPIs are largely based on how quickly they can embed those technologies in our traditional way of working. So projects that are already in play, how do we digitize those? How do we create new and exciting assets? And then connecting the program with the rest of the organization. And then obviously the usual thing when you're undergoing a transformation program is to prepare for the headwinds. Where are the people who are resisting this change? And then measuring your progress. So this means rolling out a program in a very agile way. So we've got these 6-week cohorts, but one cohort graduates and then provides feedback for the next cohort, and we're constantly improving our program as we go. We have a lot of different components of this. I won't go over all of them, I'm short on time, but one example is a digital fitness app. So this application is a platform basically, which is, by the way, available to you all as well. My team and I are happy to discuss this with you during a break. This is an application that allows you to assess your digital fitness kind of IQ. And we have made it mandatory for everyone from consultants all the way up to partners to participate in this. It's basically a set of curated learnings that you can take on the go with you. So there's podcasts, there's videos, there's short articles, and we've gamified it as well. It puts together, basically you do a diagnostic test. And the learning content, by the way, comes from all different, it's not just PwC IP, it's like TED Talks and different sources of learning. And you can use it on the go because we travel all the time. So you're sitting there waiting for a flight. You've got 10 minutes to kill. You can go and learn something, take a quick test, and it continuously lets your leadership and your peers know how you're doing based on the performance of some of your peers or your business unit. And this has been, a huge success. We've gamified it. We had a couple of prizes. Well, one was that we would get, all of PwC Middle East would get 2 extra days off between Christmas and New Year's if everyone was launching this and using this on a regular basis. And it was unbelievable. 95% of our people actually not complied, but started using this on a regular basis. And with more and more of the workforce being millennial, you'll probably agree that the more you gamify, incentivize people to participate in things like this, the more traction they get. One example of the culture that we have created, a culture around innovation where we are rewarding people to think of their jobs in a different way, in a much more digitally savvy way, is the creation of assets. So there's a senior consultant on my team who's worked with me over the last year to create this market-facing asset, which basically digitizes our previously analog change management methodology and employee engagement tool. It's a really powerful tool. This was done literally as a kind of a hobby almost, and this is something we're taking to market now. And only when you kind of provide that environment, this culture of innovation where you're rewarding people to learn and to think of things in a different way, do you come up with these things. Because even a business like ours, which is just based on hourly advice, it's going to become irrelevant really, really quickly unless we're able to digitize and change our business model to a more of an asset plus advisory business model. I don't have time for concluding notes, but there was a lot of information there. Just wanted to let you know that my team and I are here to answer any questions, to talk about our own journey, or if you have a specific issue about your organization that you'd like to speak through, we're happy to do that. Hopefully this provided you a little bit of a, shifted gears a little bit to think about your workforce and how technological change is really going to be really shifting a lot of job roles and the makeup of your workforce. So thank you.
That was absolutely wonderful. We have time for one question. One question. Any question from the audience members? Right there.
Me.
One.
Hi. So I really like your session where you said that apart from artificial intelligence, you also need to do an upgrading of skills of the people. So considering a lot of, and you said it's agnostic to sector, every sector would face some of the other challenges.
Yeah.
But my question here is, considering a lot of countries, some countries are highly labor intensive, some are already automated, and some, so if I consider each of this country, some will be, as I said, highly labor oriented. Would you have some insights in terms of what are these countries doing to upgrade the education sector? Because education also at a grassroots level has to completely change.
Yeah.
Otherwise, a mix of these countries, highly unskilled and also highly labor-oriented, would face a lot of challenges. So any insights in terms of which are these countries and what are they doing on this?
Look, the pressure on policymakers and public administration is really big because the education sector really has to change completely. Right now, I mean, if some of our consultants, come and ask for advice, should I go and do a master's degree? My answer to them immediately is like, no. By the time you get done with your master's degree, the curriculum will be pretty much irrelevant. So this whole kind of, in my generation, you do your bachelor's degree and then you do your master's degree and then you're ready to go out and get a job and then, maybe 10 years later you'll take a course. That whole paradigm has shifted. In terms of education, shorter courses, certifications are becoming much more important and they're being more valued by employers than an MBA from 10 years ago, for instance. So the way these educational institutes are developing their curriculum and their program has to be a lot more responsive to the pace of technological change. I mean, my son is doing a bachelor's degree in computer science, and I'm pretty sure that by the time he graduates in 2.5 years, he's going to have to go back to school. He's going to be on my payroll for a while. He'll have to go back to school to do a certification of some sort. But in terms of countries where predominantly the workforce is blue collar, manufacturing is another sector that is going to be massively, massively impacted by automation. And that's where, apprenticeships and vocational technical institutes need to take a bigger role, and more of the funding should be going towards those institutions than four-year degree institutions.